gonna shoot me down, 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 down. Now I'm bulletproof because of you.
Well, hey, welcome to chapel, guys. You guys excited for a great chapel? I'm really excited. I've been looking forward to this for a while now. We have some special guests that are going to be joining us, but these are people that you know. These are teachers, some of the leaders of our school, and they have graciously accepted the invitation to share some wisdom and some of their experience on the topic of relationships and dating and things like that. And so a couple weeks ago, or last week, you guys submitted questions in your first hour. If you didn't, then you can ask your teacher what happened. I'm just kidding. It's okay. We got a lot of different questions. We had over 150 questions submitted. I'm hoping to get through maybe 5 or 6. So if your question is asked, congratulations. You submitted a great question. But all the way around, you guys submitted great questions for our panelists. And I want to just offer one just quick word of instruction and just invitation for you. Our panelists have taken the time to prepare, to plan, and I hope that there would be at least one thing that you can take away that you could implement into your current relationships and to future relationships. We know that high school is difficult. There's lots of questions. We don't have everything figured out, but we want to at least offer a little bit of what God's given us to that we've learned from, the mistakes we've made and the things that He's taught us along the way. And so as our panelists answer, I would ask that you would maybe try to hold your applause in the middle so that way we can move through the questions as much as possible. After they're done answering, if you'd like to, you can clap for them. But we want to try to make this as smooth as possible so we can get through as many questions as we can. Because that's the whole point of this thing, all right? So I know that you guys can do that, and I trust that you guys are going to do that well. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce you to our lovely guests that are joining us here this morning. You guys can make some noise for them as I invite them out. First up, we have the one and only Mr. and Mrs. Corbett, everybody. Mr. and Mrs. Corbett are joining us. You guys know Mrs. Corbett from the many classes that she has subbed and taught over the years. If you don't know who Mrs. Corbett is, just go to YouTube and type in the King's Academy Gritty or something like that, and she will probably come up. She is famous on ESPN. So we're really grateful to have them here with us. And last but certainly not least, we have the one and only Mr. and Mrs. Martin. Give it up for the Martin duo. I'm super excited, and I'm joined by my lovely bride, Mrs. Bartz, and we're going to talk about some of the questions that you guys submitted. But before we kind of get into the questions, we have a little icebreaker that we're going to go down the line. Maybe we'll start on the other end. Sorry, Mrs. Martin. We're going to start over here, and we're going to work our way this way. And you guys are going to tell us maybe a little bit about when, where, and how you first met.
Well, we met at college, and I was his boss.
Still is.
True. And we were working together. I was dating somebody else. I got dumped. He said he got dumped. At the same time, we went on our first date. It was a lie. And then he
Not my proudest moment.
Yes, he lied to me. He didn't happen to get dumped at that time, but he just wanted to let me know that he was available. And then we started from there, and that was how we met.
Corbett, a little bit about your story.
Well, I'm going to let my wife speak, but she's got a slightly different story than I do. But my story is actually a prequel. Prequel is a story before the story. So I had graduated from college where I played football quarterback, and I signed a contract for a Christian school in Miami, Florida. And so I came down from Chicago, and I was going to work for construction for the school. They were putting up a second story, and so I felt I needed to find out what Florida heat was so I could coach my team properly. Anyway, so there was a girl that I dated in college, and she was interested in coming also to this school. So I got an interview with the principal for her, and she flew down. And at the end of the interview, the principal gave her a copy of the yearbook that year so that she could help her to make a better decision. And so we left. I took her to the airport that evening, and she was about to get down the gate. She turned to me and she said, "Remember this, don't go running around barefoot." I thought, what? Running around barefoot? Why are you asking me that? She said, "You know, that teacher in the yearbook, barefoot," or whatever her name is. I said, "Oh, okay." So I went home that evening, and guess what? The first thing I did was get my copy of the yearbook out and look for this barefoot person that she was talking about. And I didn't find a barefoot, but I did find a Miss Barefield. And she is sitting next to me right now.
The issue is, all right, his girlfriend Judy, right? Okay.
Close to your mouth.
His girlfriend Judy, all right, okay, told him not to run around me, but she didn't tell me not to run around him. That was a big mistake. Okay. So the day I went on, and I've got to talk faster, I know. I went on campus. I was working curriculum that summer, and the news buzz was, as it is in schools, there's this good-looking coach coming down to coach football. So I knew he was coming. But that day I went in the school. I was heading towards my classroom, and I saw this guy, at the end of the hall, putting nails in his apron. I'd also seen a convertible Cougar outside that I thought, I bet that's the coach's. So anyway, I went down the hall, and as I approached, I have never seen such a good-looking specimen of a man in my life. Unreal. And I thought, I was getting weak all over, and I thought, you know what? He is open territory, all right? And before you accuse me of anything, when he came in for the interview, the main thing was that this young lady he was engaged to had a horse, and she wanted to bring the horse with her. And they were trying to work out how they were going to bring this horse, okay? So in any case, like I said, ladies, he's open territory, all right? So I walked up, and just as coyly as I could, I said, "Are you the new football coach?" A week later, he asked me out. 2 weeks later, we told each other we loved each other. Christmas, I got my diamond. Spring, we were married, okay? And so therefore, this good-looking hunk, all right, the way he looked with his, he had his construction hat on, and he had his shirt open, and he was, just glistening with perspiration. I mean, guys, I wanted him to take me right then, all right? However, you have to understand, back to reality here. Remember, hormones are always the same. We're old, but they don't change, all right? So therefore, God, I know, it was divine intervention. That time, that moment, with everything that we had gone through separately, we were prepared for each other before time. And even though he was handsome and good looking and glistening, it was a God thing. And today, Judy has her horse in Iowa, and I have him. So. And that's the truth. That is the truth. True story.
I love it. Ring by Spring. We got some photos of you guys back in the day. Some of these That's Mrs. Corbett. Is that the newspaper picture you saw of him?
I can't see the picture.
The one you sent me. The one.
Ooh, what? I'm sorry.
The newspaper when you sent him?
Oh, the newspaper. That was
Yeah.
in the Miami Herald when he was working on the new building, and that's what he looked like. And
Gotcha.
he looked just like Magnum PI, if you know who that is.
Yeah,
And that-
I'll take your
all
word
right.
for it.
It's because he grew a mustache too.
An old wedding photo of you guys. So beautiful, so cute. I know we have a picture of the Martins as well from when they first met. That's Mr. and Mrs. Martin. I love it. I know we've shared a little bit about our story, and ours is not as removed, but just recently, kind of maybe share a little bit about how we met.
Yeah, so, am I on? Hello, check. Hey. So we met about 9 years ago now. We're coming up on 5 years of marriage in April. Woo. So we met in high school. We've shared a bit of this story, but I had transferred out of a very large public high school, switched to a very small private school in the area, and I had found him on Instagram well before I transferred schools and was like, that's my guy, that's the one. And then I got to that school, and he was an absolute jerk.
Well, when you're 17, you have a weird way of showing your affection. So
We'll call it that.
Yeah, I grew up a lot since then.
Yes, thank God. So he was trying to set me up with one of his other friends, and then it all kind of came to a point where he was like, you know what, like, we're all going on the boat, you should come on so-and-so's boat after school, which he proceeded to make fun of me because I showed up, which I don't know why I did this. I showed up in socks and Sperry's. That was like the thing in high school, like socks with Sperry's, and that's how I showed up to the boat, and he made fun of me for that, and then he tried to set me up with his friend on said boat. And then we actually started talking, and we had like our first date after that. And it was like, wow.
All uphill from there.
All uphill.
So we have a photo of us from prom. That was our high school prom. Back in the day, I will say. The goal of any relationship is you want it to last. I don't think anybody goes into one thinking, I don't really want this thing to last a while. And I mean, a genuine and honest relationship. And so the goal of it is you want it to last for, hopefully, especially when you think about marriage one day, a lifetime. And so I wanted to ask the Corbetts, what is a question that someone submitted was, what is the secret to a healthy, long-lasting relationship?
Well, first of all, thank you for inviting us to this little group discussion because my wife has a lot to say. But I guess we're both of us are the oldest, longest lasting people up here, so there's a lot to say. I could go for the whole chapel service talking about what makes a long-lasting relationship. But in my experience, and in my wife's experience, and because of time constraints, I'm going to just take about 4 bullet items that we've experienced in our life that relate to long-lasting relationships. The first one is keep the Lord first in your life. It's a must. It's a got to have, and you keep that up at the top of your list always. The second bullet item is communication. You got to have communication, and it's got to be 2 ways, not just one listening and the other talking. My wife calls it her verbal massage. So communication is point 2. 3, learn to say the words. I was wrong. Will you forgive me? And mean it from the heart. And the 4th one, you're not always right, no matter what you think. And that's the hardest one for me.
To kind of reiterate exactly what he said, I have really 3 C's, all right? You care and you communicate, okay? And you commit, okay? Caring. Guys, we live in a very narcissistic society. We're selfish, all right? I see it in the cafeteria every day when kids butt in line and there's 18 kids behind them and they think, oh, this is my friend, I can stand here. You know, we want to be first. We want to be right. We don't want to give up our rights. You know, bless Travis Kelce's heart, you know, after getting in his face of his coach this past week, a lot of reasons why he did or didn't, but the bottom line, and I'm sure he's asked forgiveness, but the bottom line at that moment and at that time, he wanted to say what he wanted to say, all right? And in a marriage, my husband is first. My husband, I don't worship him, but I do put him on a pedestal. Now this has to do, don't forget, whoever is sitting around you or beside you, all right, your friends, the person you date, and a lot of you are dating some, none, or lots, all right? That person, right, some of you are dating a lot, all right? But that person is first, all right? That person is first. You show them care and love and appreciation. That you're in the car with me. We're getting to go to a football game together. When guys come around, she's still first. He's still first. With that too, that care that you give is also communication. And that means talking and listening, okay? Paying attention to your partner. That is such an important part. Guys, our world today, when you're dating, all right, the whole culture is saying, you know, it's affection first, okay? This is first. When you ask your girlfriend, what did you do last night, you know, on your date? How did it go? They're not asking what you talked about. They're asking, how did it really go? What happened, you know? Okay? So we get the cart before the horse. And the deal is, as God's plan, you get to know a person socially, you get to know a person emotionally, you get to know a person spiritually, and then comes the physical when you get married, all right? You can talk to the Bartzes or the Martins or us. We've got it all right? A lot of physical, but it would not have happened if we hadn't known and listened to each other first. And I'm kind of glad you're laughing because the world puts such emphasis on the sex part, and it's good, fine. But if you miss out on the other, you've missed out on everything. If you miss out, don't mess it up by doing what's first should be last and last should be first. Lastly, you gotta commit. It's forever. Husbands aren't on a return basis, okay? Neither are wives, okay? God is constant. My love for my husband is from him. And it's forever, okay? It's forever. It doesn't change. We go through a lot. We have arguments. Stuff happens. But I'm committed. He was prepared for me, and I was prepared for him.
So you talked about getting to know each other and actually like really getting to know one another spiritually, emotionally, as a person. And as you guys do that in a relationship, you start to discover things about that other person. And I found it interesting that there were a lot of questions that were submitted that asked this question about this idea of being unequally yoked. Or if we put it another way, maybe dating someone or being with someone that has a different worldview, or you're just in two different worlds when it comes to morality or faith or worldview. So the Martins, how would you maybe guide or direct or counsel students when it comes to being unequally yoked? So number one, kind of what does that mean? And number two, like how do you know if you are, and what should you do about it?
Well, let me first explain what the definition of like the yoke situation. Okay, I would assume when we're talking about being yoked, it's like two oxen having a yoke on them, moving in the same direction, doing the same job, having the same goals. And when you're thinking about your partner, you have to think that the yoke that you're talking about is actually marriage. Marriage is that. So if you think that marriage is a forever commitment, then you need to decide, who do I want to spend forever with? And I know a lot of you come from a lot of different backgrounds, and you've had a lot of things happen within your own families. And so your view on marriage might be slightly different. But when we're talking from a Christian perspective, when you are moving into considering being committed to somebody, that yoke has to be marriage, and it has to be forever. So when you dismiss this idea of targeting or wanting or desiring somebody who is a Christian versus a non-Christian, if you dismiss that and say, I think it'll be okay, it'll all work out, when the affections and the feelings go by the wayside a little bit because the tasks of everyday life, such as families and children and work and jobs and all the situations that come upon a family, as you know, because you're in families, okay? When that happens and you have a different perspective or different worldviews together, that's when the yoke becomes a little bit more unbearable. So one person thinks and views something this way, and the other person views it this way, and you're trying to stay together, and you're trying to move in the same direction, but when your foundation is not the same, you cannot see forever anymore. And that is why when you're going into these relationships that you have to view it like that. Now, whatever your view of dating is at this moment, could be for fun, it could be for social, it could be for whatever. But in essence, if we are thinking about it, dating is to find your spouse. It's, I like this, I don't like this. I put up with this, I won't put up with this. It is that. So why would you take an unequally yoked person, somebody of not your belief system, somebody of not your desires and wants, you understand, and just entertain that? Okay, you want to go out with people, view dating as I'm looking for a spouse, and if that is your ultimate goal as a Christian young person, is to find a spouse that believes like you, then that is why we would give that advice to go ahead and only date those people of your belief system and of your views and how you view the future and how you want to raise your family and how you want to go to church and that type of thing, because then it will be less heartache a little bit later. So.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. In my advisory from time to time, we talk about this, and guys say, oh, I'm missionary dating. I'm going to bring the girl along with me. And I will tell you from my experience, both with college roommates, both with people that are close to me, and I won't say who they are because they might watch this video, but I have seen more often than not that the non-Christian person will actually pull the Christian person towards their point of view rather than missionary dating working out. I'm not saying that it never works out, but don't missionary date. The other thing that I would say for being equally yoked, there's a spiritual component to it, and when you're both following Christ, you're both looking at the same thing. It's easier to move in the same direction as a yoked couple. The other thing is, it's not just spiritually. You want somebody that has common interests, common goals as you. And so if you are getting more serious in your dating relationship, and a hint, as Mrs. Martin said, dating does lead to marriage. So don't think that you can just play around and it's never going to lead to marriage. It probably will. But I think as you are getting more serious in your dating, have those deep discussions. How many children do you want? What type of financial situation do you want to have? What kind of church do you want to go to? Have those before, because there may be some non-negotiables that you have that the other person has non-negotiables too. And either it's going to work out or you're going to go your separate ways. It's a lot easier at your age to go your separate ways, so take that advice.
And I'll just add one quick thing that I'm just not remembering because my memory is really bad. I was dating somebody when I met him. So I had started dating that person. So we met the last year of college, and, well, my last year of college. Anyway, so when I was a freshman in college, I met this young man, and he wasn't a Christian. So I was like, oh, I can't date you, because I went to King's. I can't date you, you're not a Christian, whatever. He becomes a Christian. And we date on and off for 4 years. And so when he says missionary dating, it doesn't really work out for somebody who wants to follow the Lord, and you're kind of pulling them along. And he became a Christian, but then now I have a new Christian, and the reason why our relationship was so volatile is because I was trying to bring him along, and he was going this way and that way, and it just wasn't working out. Thank the Lord for God's grace, because had he never dumped me my last semester of college, I would have never said yes to a guy that I've been working together for 6 months. God had it all orchestrated. He knew what I needed. He knew what I wanted, even though it was an extremely hurtful and painful breakup, dumped me flat on my butt, didn't know what I was going to do, and then he had provided it way before that had happened. So the missionary dating type of situation, the newly saved, the this and that is just my story. And I am always thankful daily for a husband like him, because I know exactly where that other relationship would have ended. So.
And when I was younger, I actually prayed for my wife, so you guys could start praying for your spouse even now, that God would bring along the right person. And when I met Mrs. Martin, I have to say at my college, I was the best tutor at my college. If you had questions in calculus, or you had questions in chemistry or physics, you came to me to get tutored. And so I had been at this tutoring center for many years and was pretty proud of how good I was. However, God humbles us, right? So they had a position open for a night supervisor, and they didn't hire me even though I applied, and they hired her. And I was very angry because I was giving up $5 an hour. She was going to make more money than I made. But it's funny that God had heard my prayers from earlier, and even in my disappointment, he was providing my lifelong love. So sometimes in your disappointment, she talks about getting dumped. I talk about not getting the job that I wanted. God put us together, and next month it's 29 years. So God puts it together for you.
Congratulations. I love that. I want to move on to a question of red flags. We talk about having different worldviews and things like that, which is obviously clearly a red flag. Mrs. Bartz, a question that was submitted was, what are some red flags in a dating relationship, and how do you know which ones are deal breakers? So maybe talk through that a little bit.
Yeah, we get this a lot. And as I was thinking about it, I was trying to think through, what do I see from students? What do I hear all the time? And I feel like a really big one is, a red flag is someone who treats you different when it's just the two of you versus when you're in a group of people or a different setting where there's other people involved. So this could look like they text you one way, or say you're snapping and they're like this and that, and then you see them in person with their buddies, totally different, red flag. That's a red flag. Another one I thought about, someone who isolates you away from your friends and family. To me, I got thinking, okay, why do people do this? And I kind of was a little bit of a red flag when we first started dating. And I think part of it is you want that control, right? Okay, if this is going to be your person, well, then you need that control of well, it's me and you and no one else, and I just want it to be us, and I want to hang out with you all the time, and slowly but surely, you're not seeing your friends anymore, you're not seeing your family as much, and they're starting to slip in things about talking bad about your family or your friends. And it's if you feel like those friends in your life are there for a reason, and you trust those guys, and why would the person you're talking to want to take you away from that? So maybe you struggle with that a little bit like I did, but I would say that's definitely a red flag. And then I think you had a red flag, which kind of leads to a deal breaker.
Well, I was going to say, I think, when you look at just relationships, when we're talking about, getting to know someone, asking good questions, I think that if you are in a relationship or considering a relationship in the future, if you can't feel like you can be vulnerable or honest with that person, I think that obviously that comes with time, but that could show maybe like this surface level type of relationship. And one of my favorite quotes is from a pastor who just died recently from cancer, but he pastored a church in New York, and he wrote a book on marriage, and he talks about this dynamic where he says that in a relationship, if you're loved but not known, it's superficial. So you love each other, but you don't really know much about each other. And so that love is superficial because you don't have anything that could maybe taint it or mar it from being fully pure. But he says if you're fully known and not loved, that's all of our greatest fears. That someone knows everything that I am and everything that I'm not, and they choose to not love me because they don't want to deal with that. But he says in a relationship, and what he's talking about is in a godly marriage, it's one that reflects an individual and another individual who fully knows one another and yet still chooses to fully love each other. And he says that is our ultimate hope for all of us, that we would be fully known and yet that person would still choose to fully love me. And he relates it to, this is what Christ does for us. This is what Jesus does for us. That he knows everything that we are and everything that we aren't, all of our mistakes and our past, but yet he still chooses to love us. And so I think I would say just, girls, like if there's a guy that doesn't fully love you because of what you aren't or what you can't do, that's a total red flag, and that's not someone that's receiving the love of Christ and imparting it to you. And guys, if you don't feel like you can be honest and vulnerable and feel like you can be fully known and yet still fully loved, it's not a relationship that you want to pursue into the future. Because ultimately that love comes from Christ. That's what Jesus does for us, that he knows everything that we've done and yet still chooses to love us. And so in a godly marriage or relationship one day, like that's what we try to kind of do for one another. And so that's what I would just add to that.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of red flags out there, but I think ultimately it comes down to what you're saying, like that communication. So if you're not able to be vulnerable, if you're not able to communicate, if you are not able to say sorry and own up to the things that you did, I think those are things that turn into deal breakers. Like aside from just, this is kind of concerning that they're doing this, red flag. But when it becomes like, okay, this person can't own up to what they did, we have no communication, and when we try to talk about things, it just breaks down, I would say that's when it turns into a deal breaker.
Yeah. No one's perfect. Did you want to add to that?
I was just going to add one thing when you were talking about the dating relationship, and the fact is, when you're going out, okay, on a date, or when you're dating regularly or not, think about what you do, think about the conversations you have and what you do. If it's a lot of affection, that guy is interested in himself, and it goes back to narcissism, what he can get and not what he's going to give. It works with a girl too, very same way. Your mindset is not according to a worldview. Are we on worldview? Can I talk about that yet or no? Okay. When we were talking about worldview and yoked a while ago, my dad used to plow. He had oxen. One would go one way, one would go the other. They didn't jihad, is what he said. When you are in a dating relationship, friendship relationship, married relationship, if your worldview, and I don't want to confuse worldview with biblical worldview. A worldview can be agnostic and it can be atheistic. But you've heard biblical worldview from Mr. Gentry and Mr. Marlowe and Mr. Stewart, and they do it so well, and that is when it is God-centered. Now, when we look out at you guys, our desire is just what Mr. Bartz said a while ago. Our desire is that you look to God first for your direction. Okay, you can't be dating or even have friends necessarily if they're not jihading with you, like my dad used to say, if they are not in the same direction, all right? Your faith, your values. Sometimes it's just your preferences. Look at the kids around you. Look at the kid next to you. You want to go see a movie. Maybe he wants to go see Top Gun. You want to go see Ken and Barbie, okay? That's just a preference, all right? But then it goes to faith and values. Okay, you're with your friends at lunch and they maybe let loose this expletive that maybe that's not in your world or biblical worldview. Now remember, you get your worldview from parents and teachers and coaches, the Bartzes, the Martins. They're your examples, okay? But biblically, God is the creator. He came to be creation. He gave us his book. He gave us his life. Why would he not be our constant guide? So if that is your choice, all right, if that's your choice, then when you're at lunch and kids are maybe talking about cheating on a test, what they're doing on a date, I can't stand my mother, you're thinking, am I in my comfort zone or not? Do not change. Don't miss this. Don't change, and I heard the bell, I think. Don't change your perspective to be accepted, whether it's a date or whether it's your friends or anyone else. You have to say, I am resolute like Daniel was. I will not change my mind. I want to follow God's leading in my life, and I especially want to be and have the partner God desires for me. And the wise thing, don't give of yourself till you find that person. You know, who wants to be affectionate with someone and you don't even know what they have for breakfast in the morning or how they like their eggs, okay? Why am I going to make out with a guy that doesn't really care about me and my thoughts and my belief, all right? Don't go different ways. Have the same guy, okay? Over, right?
I love it. Well, as they share, I know that their willingness to share and their willingness to share their experience and what God's taught them along the way is really just emblematic of all of your teachers and everybody else that makes up the King's Academy, that we want to be able to walk with you guys through high school and be able to not give you the answers, because we don't have all the answers, but just to be able to walk with you through those challenges and those questions that you guys have. And I think that that's just what makes this place so special. I know that, you know, there are challenges and it's not perfect, like no place is perfect. But I think that that's what makes this place so unique, is that you have teachers and people that want to walk with you through the challenges of high school and how do you navigate that well. And so that way we can try our best to set you up for a life of flourishing and success when it comes to relationships and dating. And so can we thank all of our panelists for sharing and taking the time. And so much more could be said. And so, like I said, I'd hope that you would just take that chance to talk with your teachers about it. I'm going to close in prayer. So join me in prayer, and then we're going to close in our benediction. Lord, I pray for each one of these students, and as they reflect on their own relationships and potential future relationships, Lord, I pray that you would just do a work of conviction. It doesn't feel good to be convicted. It doesn't feel good to be challenged, but Lord, I pray that you would do a work within their lives, that they might evaluate their relationships and see, Lord, are these relationships honoring you? Are they glorifying you? And Lord, are they ones that are going to just benefit me and be healthy for me in the long run? Lord, I pray that you would help all of us as teachers and administrators and staff, that we would just humbly walk with these students and offer your word of grace and your word of healing and reconciliation to broken relationships, that we would walk with students as they celebrate, but also as they mourn. And so, Lord, I pray that you would just touch the lives of our students, that you would just bring hope and healing to their lives and their relationships. And so, God, I'm just grateful for the people that have joined me up on stage, but for all of our teachers and staff that embody this same spirit and this same Lord, just devotion and commitment to walking with our students. So we give you all the praise and all the glory. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. All right, benediction. You guys know the drill. Jesus is for me. At the cross he and rose again. Thanks be to God. Amen.